Oh, kiddo, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is September 15th, and this is another of our monthly blocker bug scrubs. Today, your host will be Eddie. So, Eddie, take it away from here.
Okay. So does anyone have any issues they'd like to take a look at first?
There was a request on the SIG CLI mailing list, so I would suggest we start with that one.
I think Antoine looked at that one. Let me...
I'll paste that in the chat. That's Kubernetes 25238.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So this is the one that Antoine was looking at.
Yeah, I thought that Antoine had said that server-side apply kind of fixed this deployment replica behavior, since the different clients aren't fighting for the replicas field. Or did I get that one wrong?
I think
Okay.
that's accurate. There's also is in our Slack too, actually. This one. Service apply will fix that issue. It's GA and will ramp up in the ecosystem.
If I understand it correctly, there's some fighting for the replicas field with client-side apply, and then server-side apply with the field manager kind of fixes that, if I understand it correctly.
That's probably right. Well, I got to restart my screen real quick. GNOME is chugging. Okay. Okay, so let's call this one looked at for now. Is it actioned? Okay. Okay, this is the one I had. So this is run commands don't return when using kubectl 122 and above. And I'm able to reproduce this. And so the issue I have, we're going. There we go. Okay, so if we do so kubectl run, and then I just simplified their command a little bit. And it weirdly hangs. And then if you hit enter, there we go. So like it'll just kind of sit unfinished and it won't actually leave the prompt. And there you go, that's the error. So if you hit a key, you'll get this end of file error. And this is from the remote command file. And so this appeared for 122. So I went through all the commits I could find that happened between 121 hitting release and 122 being cut. And I didn't find anything that I would point at this. So there's potential of a dependency that changed maybe. I was actually pretty stumped when I looked at this yesterday.
Did you check both run command and the remote .go files?
Yeah, there was one commit that might have, it was a little sus, and so I reverted it, and I was still able to reproduce the issue. So I ruled that out, and I couldn't find any other commits. I also looked at the speedy code. I didn't find anything that stood out. So I'm not sure what it is.
If someone has the time, that would be an interesting thing to
So
look into it.
the reason I left this on triage was, should we transfer this to the main repo? Is this scoped beyond kube control possibly?
That's something that I'm not 100% sure yet.
Okay.
We would need to have a proof that this is either, I don't know, remote or a particular dependency where the issue is, and not with the run command itself. But before we roll it out, yeah, we would need to make sure that that's the case. Another question. Okay, so he always tested with a server 120, and you were testing that against 121 locally?
Yeah, that was
correct?
121.
Yeah, so that's within the supported.
I was also able to reproduce it though on 122.
Latest, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a 122. Well, this is 121 cluster also, but I think they reproduced it on 122. Yeah, this uses it here.
Used an earlier client if it would matter, and also if you increase the verbosity, is anything logged out or anything? I don't know.
Your V9 is after it's part of the command, not part of the kube color.
Good catch. So there's the post. That's discovery. Nothing jumps out. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but if anyone wants to take a look, feel free. I was pretty stumped. I think we depend on, doesn't the speedy code depend on container decode?
That I'm not sure, but we have some dependencies. Can't remember specifically what is the chain there.
Okay. If anyone wants to take a look, feel free. I will spend a little more time on it and potentially move it and tag Jordan or someone from API Machinery that would know that code. Okay, so we have some fresh issues. Kubernetes control described nodes with multi-containers may display error quota. Is it default?
Philip, Philip, you were touching the quota describe or get. Is it possible that it was fixed in one place and we missed the other one?
Yeah, not sure.
When quantity is 0, we cannot just simply add. Is that what that's doing?
Are you saying that if you add quantity 0, the value is wrong? In
Is
that
it a-
case, I would expect an add having an issue.
Is it a default? Anyone want to take a look at it?
Still kind of confused about what the issue is, to be honest. It's also labeled as being described nodes output, but that looks like a pod list in the first example. What, like, which screenshots are even the described node problem? And is the first one, the second, actually the same pod? I'm not sure I understand even what the report is.
Might have been better to include the exact command.
So we do show pods in the node output.
Oh, I see. It's a partial screenshot of just that little snippet.
Is the issue that the init container is the one that has the limit, and it's showing as the limit on the pod? Is that?
That's what it looks like. Like we are only looking at the init containers and not on the full container. And we don't look at both or all of them. I'm not 100% sure how we are calculating quota with init containers. I would have to look it up. Yeah, error producer. Maybe we can even tag this one as a good first time issue.
Yeah, potentially. Let's see what they provide first.
Yeah.
Okay. This is 1109. Client Go credential plugins ignores expiration timestamp field. You can include a timestamp. I'm sending the below response. Still tries to get a new token on each execution. It would, right?
Yeah, because we are caching only for the time of a single call. And whenever we are invoking a new command, it is recreating everything or rereading stuff from the file.
Which is probably what has to happen. You can't reuse the token.
Yeah, it's different. It's fine to reuse in a long-running application. It will be slightly different in a, invoke, execute, finish flow that a kubectl follows. I would, yeah.
Yeah, it's only for the one call, which it reuses for multiple API calls.
Yes.
We don't cache those tokens outside of a single command run.
Right. That would be a security vulnerability if we would store the tokens on a disk without user consent. So yeah, I'll probably say it will work fine for long-running commands. I don't know, attach, for example, or exec, but not for short-lived.
Used for all the API requests under the one, or discovery, etc. We do not cache those tokens beyond that, beyond a single invocation of kubectl. Good. Okay. kubectl create job image can't create job from private image.
Private image is private for a reason. So basically you need to give the service account a secret to be able to pull the image, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's expected.
exactly. And modifying image after you create it, you can always modify. Uh-oh, he created a job. Yeah, both are perfectly expected. There's yeah, we don't. We will not allow any overrides. You can always create, pipe that into a file and create it manually if you care. Because there's a reason why we created it this way. So yeah, it's working as designed. There's no bug in here.
Yeah. So what are they trying to, they're just trying to run a one-off job?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. They have a cron job and they are, on one end, they are struggling with the private images. And second, that's one problem. And he realized that we have the image pool secret. And the second thing is he has a cron job and he wants to create a job out of it. But during the creation of the job from the cron job, he wants to tweak the command or inject environment variables. But yeah, there's a reason why we create a job from cron job, because we want to have that copy running ad hoc without
Right.
any tweaks.
For overrides of cron job bars from a config. All right, I'll type that up later. From a CLI call.
If you care, you modify the cron job.
Build a controller or why, I don't understand why he can't create a job. Do we not provide the right flags he needs to not do a from? Is he trying to use it as a template?
That's what it looks like. He's kind of like trying to work around it as like a templating engine type of a thing. At least that's what it looks like.
Okay. kubectl config set credentials should support impersonate fields.
Don't we allow random fields to be set through set command? Yeah. So basically we have kubectl config set property name and property value. Maybe that would be nice to have the set credentials expose additional bits. But then again, yeah, well, maybe I could probably persuade it to let a PR like that in.
So they're asking for what, 3 flags to be added?
Yes.
I think that there would be a collision with.
How common do we think it will be for people to be frequently modifying
Yeah.
these. Like, I think it would have to be pretty common to justify adding that many new flags to support it when there's already a way to do it with other flags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be against adding it too. And we'd have collisions because these are global flags so we'd have to deal with a collision there.
I wonder if maybe that's a case of just injecting those values properly, because when you are invoking the config flag, you're only modifying your local copy. So maybe it's just a matter of reading them and supporting them in the set credentials. On the other hand, not every field that we have in the YAMLs are exposed directly through a flag or a command. So it's fair to suggest that kubectl set a config set as an alternative. Only if people will complain more, we can consider fixing this or improving.
Yeah. No props.
Kubectl config set
Yeah.
prop name, prop value.
Overrides. Flag shadowing with global. If there's interest, we could consider. Okay. Okay, so this is 1104. Explain resource shows invalid mappings for fields of type string string. That
Yeah, I don't think we expose that kind of information in the Open API to be able to expose that in the explain. I would need to double check. But I'm not sure if we do have that kind of information.
we do have, I'm confused.
So, for example, annotations. If you look at metadata for a password, for example. So the annotations, or I don't know else. Yeah, this is showing that the type of this field is a map string string. He wants to have the ability to present information about specific keys that you can use in a particular map, because some of the maps, I don't know, he does mentions in PV spec capacity, it might have specific keys. And if you, I guess, specify a different one, it will fail a validation. But that will be very resource specific. So yeah. He does mention that it is documented.
Yeah. Storage. So we don't, well, yeah, it's not part of the Open API spec.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's possible to expose that kind of
Yeah.
information in the first place, but yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Maybe there are some kind of a default values or something like that.
In the open API, you're saying?
Yeah. You can express certain validation rules through an open API, and if I remember correctly, we don't expose those.
But
But
for
then
map of string to string, so like for integers, you could say the range,
Yeah.
or a min or max. But for a map string, I'm not sure how that would work in the open API.
On the other hand, explain is to give you some bits of information. It doesn't have to have everything. So
Yeah, I would assume that in the code, this is it's not like a type, right? It's probably just a
validation.
if this equal, yeah,
Yeah.
if this equals this, okay.
Yeah, he even says that even
Yeah,
that in the official documentation, there's a mention that currently the only keyword that exists is storage for this particular resource, PV spec capacity, and there's nothing else supported. But that will be hidden in the validation most likely.
right.
So you would have to check under Kubernetes APIs. I think that's core validation.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we'd add, right?
Yeah,
Here we
It's
go.
not something that would be in the open API. I would imagine you'd have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
As well as checking the open API.
Yeah,
I mean, you would basically end up, if you try it, it will fail and the validation will tell you what to do. And that's fine. So I'm inclined to close it as another bug.
yeah, it's of type resource list. Capacity.
Just the idea that in the future it would support different resources natively or be extensible, and that's why it's type resource list rather than something more specific that would have a named key instead of being string to quantity.
Yeah, but that would mean that we are changing API, and I doubt something like that will be easily accepted within GA API.
Eddie, is resource name an enum that's got like different items like storage and what I'm trying to.
Looks like it's just
CPU
a
memory.
string.
And so it's coming in as a string, but it's not just like any old string. It's got to be one of the few
Yes.
things. So I think that's part of the problem is like it can only be one of those four things probably, but there's nothing that says that in the open API spec.
Correct.
Right. The open API isn't connected here with this in enum. I'm guessing.
Didn't I just see a KEP recently about some basic validations being able to be expressed in the open API section of the CRD? Maybe that could be relevant.
If something like that will be there, then yes.
I think it was an X field. I read it only really quickly, but
And this could be added to the documentation comment here, right? Must be one of these. Or it's a loose field.
It could easily be there, in which case it would appear nicely in the description. And I did see something like that being used in the past in a couple of places where it is explicitly mentioned in the comment that it can be one of those fields, or it has to, the key has to be this or that. So yeah, I could probably see something like that being added as a comment above the field that only key storage is allowed or supported currently.
Yeah. This could also be built into our OpenAPI generator, right?
I would probably just add it to as a description to the field itself,
Yeah, but I'm sure there's more instances of this.
possibly.
But does each instance necessarily support all 4 types, or one, like the same subset of those types that you were showing?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That if it's ad hoc validations, then it seems to me we'd have to be
It-
documenting specific to the field work. Right.
It is ad hoc. It is ad hoc because the capacity is defined as a resource list, which undercovers is eventually string. But if you look under the validation code expects a particular resource. On the other hand, if you look at the old possible resource types, there's a storage, memory, CPU, and there was something else, fourth one, I can't remember, ephemeral storage. And I'm guessing that depending on the context, different will be used. And that's directly in the validation code only. Yeah.
Getting a comment into the output seems like the best solution we have available. Then I did just link the cap I mentioned in case anyone's curious about it, but I don't think it's terribly relevant in the end.
I mean, on the other hand, the description clearly points to official documentation where capacity is explained. So you have that pointer there. And they just figure out it'll be easier to keep it there rather than everywhere, which is, I think, fine as well.
We could at least update that doc, maybe, like it just says currently storage size is the only resource, like it's a descriptive instead of showing, like we could, if they don't find that clear, we could say here, here are the keys in the linked doc.
Yeah. I still think that we should be able to pull in this type into the OpenAPI spec.
Right, but from this type, you get information about all the possible values. And there's 4 of them.
Right.
And that would be wrong because in this particular
Right.
context, only storage is allowed.
Yeah, you're right. Okay,
That's what I meant before.
I understand.
That's why it has to be explicitly mentioned, which
Yeah.
they kind of did by adding links to particular fields.
Yeah. All right, does someone want to type that one up? Volunteer?
I'll do that. I did volunteer, but of course I was muted.
Thank you. Okay. So that was that one. Okay. Kubecontrol copy fails with error unexpected end of file. So I think this is an environment issue and I was not able to reproduce it. So this user is apparently copying hundreds of gigabytes of data from pods and they're seeing end of file errors. And I only tested with a 10 gigabyte file, but I assume it's a network drop or something.
Yeah.
So to me, that's environment. And this is also an anti-pattern. They should be doing they're obviously running a job and then trying to get the output of that job. So they should be shipping that to like a bucket or something.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll close this one later. Okay, Brian, you looked at this one too. This was user wanted a length function inside of our JSON path, and they saw that this Java library has a length function. And I think that they were confused thinking that this was like the official JSON path spec as opposed to a Java library.
Yeah, and I looked at it a little bit, and I mean, maybe not surprisingly or whatever, we don't follow exactly the spec anyway, but I don't think it's part of the spec. I think it's an extension on the spec. It did make me think though. I want and I don't know. It seems easy enough to manipulate the output however you want, just by dumping it out to JSON, I guess. But it kind of made me think. It's like, I wonder how hard it would be to just like make printers that are pluggable, so you could just like build your own custom printer and use it. Just to, kind of like plugins.
Yeah, well, in the worst case, you always have something like JQ or YQ, depending whether you want to work with JSON or YAML. So yeah, we can do certain things, but I wouldn't expect us to go with everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple enough to just pipe it to something else that then does whatever you want with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we ship JSON.
I have a quick related question. So is there code anywhere within Kubernetes that kind of does JSON path like functionality? So like if you had in code in your Go code 2 resources like in an unstructured format and you wanted to, or even just the straight bytes, is there any like JSON path code that allows you to get at a particular field with some kind
Yes.
of what?
Yes, we have a JSON path printer even.
Okay.
So if you look at the help of kubectl get, the output will give you how to do JSON path even.
And that's under client Go.
Printer is part of the CLI runtime. The JSON path parser is part of the client Go.
Cool, thanks. I was looking into that a couple days ago. Just want to take a little tangent there. Thanks.
Yeah, you just specify -- output. JSON path is the printer.
Yeah, I think I wound up in this file and then wound up in client Go.
Yeah, and
All
we
right.
fixed the bug there recently.
Okay. I will close that. Okay. Allow kubecontrol explain to display kind config. Yeah, so I replied on this. And so this has been something that's been on my bucket list for a while. The only actual documentation we have for a kubeconfig is the actual type.go file.
Yeah. I think we talked about it last time or somewhere before, that we could theoretically inject that kind of information into explain, because that information is not present on the server, so OpenAPI cannot know that information. Since it's not an official type in a Kubernetes world, it's more like a Go type only. So
Do we want to make it an official Kubernetes type?
it will never be part of API because you cannot submit a config to a server. So it's an official as in Go type API, but it's not an official API in terms of regular APIs like pod or other resources. Oh,
Right.
That's probably the word that I was missing. A lot of people confuse is that if something is an API, it's an API that is exposed on the cluster, which is not true. That's one example. And the fact that kubectl works with it closely is probably making that impression stronger.
Yeah, well, and everything like kubeadm will use it. It'll write out a kubeconfig.
Every
Yeah.
client Go user will use it. Doesn't matter whether that's your Go program, your whatever other program written in, I don't know, in Ruby, Python, Rust, whatever. As long as there's a kind of like similar to our client Go library parsing, available for parsing those, it will just work.
Yeah. And there was this, so this was actually, Tim came in and said that the documentation for it would be here at config API, which it's not. So
It
it's not
only
even,
has part, from what I see, the client authentication. I think that's part of the config.
is that part of the actual type?
You just had their exit config.
So what is this exec credentials? Okay. So that's not even referenced in here.
We could definitely add the config API description on that page that you had open a minute ago. We would just have to figure out reference. Do we have anything under kubectl in there? There's a kubectl, or is it like entire reference for kubectl itself on the left side above configuration API?
Yeah, I don't think we have the config anywhere in here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I can talk to Tim and we can see about getting this type documented on that page as a start.
Yeah, that would be a reasonable place.
Well, this has come up a few times where we haven't had, outside of the Go file, there's no documentation for it, so. All right, I'll ping Tim on that more. All right, time for one more probably. We spent a lot of time on these, damn.
Yeah, they're getting more and more trickier.
Well, that's good. That means we've sorted through all the basic ones. So We still have to tackle the regular Kubernetes repository though. Certificate authority data not merged with kubeconfig environment variable. So I know this is a computed value. We don't even have a flag for that. Yeah, this is probably worth someone taking a look at. Cool. I think that's all we have time for.
Okie doke. Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
one. See you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.